Hello and welcome. In this tutorial, we'll look at the Java numeric data type and how we will be able to convert from one data type to another. In our previous tutorial, we learned about the Java numeric data types and the ranges of values they can store. So, for example, if we have an application which is to store numeric data with numeric variables, we will be able to assign the value of one numeric variable to another, provided the latter has a wider range for storing the values. For example, if we have a variable that is of the type long, the variable of the type long will surely have a shorter range compared to the variable of the type float. So we will be able to directly assign the value from the long variable to the float variable. However, we cannot directly assign the value of a numeric variable with a wider range to a numeric variable with a smaller range unless we use typecasting. So typecasting basically refers to the process that we would use to convert the value of one data type into a value of another data type. So if we are doing this conversion from one data type to another, we are either going to employ the widening type of casting or the narrowing type of casting. In the widening type of casting, the conversion is from a small range to a larger range, whilst the narrowing type of casting, the conversion is from a wider range to a smaller range. For example, this conversion from integer to double is using the widening type of casting, whilst this conversion from the double to integer is using the narrowing type of casting. In the first case where we have the double in the brackets on the integer division, this is going to cast this integer division as a double and return for us the value as a double. On the other hand, the integer that we have before the 2.34 is supposed to cast the 2.34, which is a floating point, to an integer. So in this case, we should understand that any value after the decimal will be truncated. It will be cut off and will only return for us the value before the decimal. So can we convert a string into a numeric data type? Yes, we can do that, provided the string has a numeric value. So for example, we have the height, which is declared as a string and is assigned the value 1.76. This value 1.76 is a floating point, but in this case, it becomes a string assigned to the string variable height. That notwithstanding, we will be able to convert this value into a double. To do that, we will simply declare a new double variable and we will convert or cast the string variable into a double by simply using the double pass double and the name of the string variable, which has the string value but can be converted into a floating point value. Let's try out some practicals on the numeric data type conversions. So first of all, I will create a new Java class file and I will give it the name numeric type conversion. When it loads, I will simply create the main method. I will paste the following and we will start the practicals. So in this pasted codes, I've declared an integer variable called h with a value of 25, a double variable called height with a value of 4.56, a string variable called width with its assigned value, and another string variable called width to 56. So we will look at the conversions where we want to convert the h from an integer to a double. So we declare a new h which we call h double, and we say this h is equals to the h that has been defined earlier on. We are simply passing the value 25 to the double. So this conversion from the integer to the double is widening. We can also convert the double value for the height, which is 4.56, into an integer. To do that, we'll just declare an integer value for the height. So we call that height int is equals to, and we give it the name height. So when we do this, we would get an error because this is supposed to be the narrowing type casting. And that is because the height that we have has a wider range compared to the integer value that we have. So when we send our mouse there, it's saying we need to cast it into an integer. So we can click on the cast to get it casted. So this is going to convert the height that we have as a floating point into an integer value. So as we learned, it's going to truncate whatever that is after the decimal and only return the value before the decimal. So how do we convert a string into a double or an integer? So we'll simply declare another double variable and we call this weight double is equals to weight. And again, we would get an error because we are trying to pass a string variable into a double and we would not be able to do that. So we need to use the double pass double. So when you send your mouse to the error, you would see we either have to change the variable from double to string or we wrap it using the double pass double. So we can select the double pass double or you manually type that. So this will convert it from the string into a double value and assign it to our weight double. So what if we want to convert from the string to an integer? So we say int and we call it weight int is equals to weight 2. And again, we would have the same error because we are trying to pass a string value into an integer variable. We take our mouse to the arrow and we can wrap it using the integer pass int. Now this will also convert the value of weight 2, which is in integer form, into the weight int, which is an integer variable. So let's print out to see if our conversion works properly. So I'll print out integer h and I will print out the h as an integer. Then I would copy this and paste again. So integer, we did a conversion from the height. So the height previously was a double, we converted to an integer. So we would do that as well. So here we change this to height and change this to integer height. We want to see what will be returned when we convert a double into an integer. And we also did a conversion from a string. So weight 2 is a string. We converted to an integer variable. So we would see what happens if we print that out. So here we change that to weight. Let's do the same for the double. So I'll copy this, print, and here we change to double. And the double h, we converted the h which was in integer to the double. So we'll replace it with this to see what happens. And again, we converted this weight, which is in string, to a double. So we would see what happens if we print that out. So here we would change to weight double, and we replace this with double. And for the height, we just have it as a double, so we will print that as a double height, and we replace this. So let's run it, and this is what we will get. So it's saying the integer h, which is 25, is 25. So the integer height of 4, that is because we are converting the height, which is a floating point 4.56, to an integer. And as we learned, the values after the decimal are truncated. That is why we have 4 written. The integer weight, we get it to be 56 because we are converting weight 2, and weight 2 is a string, which is 56. We've been able to pass it as an integer to the variable weight int. Now we see the double h, which is converting the h as an integer to the double, is going to simply add a decimal point to it. So from 25, we can see it is now giving us 25.0. The double height, it is printing out what we assign to the variable height, which is a double. And the double weight, it's printing out 56.6756. That is a conversion from the string form to the double form. Now let us learn some few things. Assuming I change this from weight 2 to weight. So weight here is a floating point 56.6756. If I try to run that, I will get an error. So we can see it's trying to convert 56.6756 into an integer form. But this is a floating point, and that is why it is giving us an error at line 13. It cannot do that conversion. However, if we delete this and leave it as 53, it will do the conversion and there would be no error. So assuming in this case I have 53.56 and I put a space and I add 58, I will also get an error with a double conversion because of the white space in between these two. So if I run this, I will see an error because it is trying to convert 53.56 space 58 into a double. Because of the white space between 56 and 58, this is no more a floating point value, so the conversion will give us an issue. So we should be careful when we are dealing with converting from string to the numeric. If I delete the white space, however, and I run, the error will go. That's it for this tutorial.